It was Jim Rohn that said formal education may help you make a living, which is doubtful today. We've got more people leaving university and college qualified to be a barrister that can't get a job as a barista, and saddled with 40, 50 grand or more in college debt. So the old way doesn't work. But he said informal education will help you make a fortune. And I took that to heart, because formal education I was no good at. I couldn't spell MBA. I was out of school at 16. My job here isn't to convince anybody. I've got no right to change anybody else's mind or their model of the world. They're on their path. My job is to hold up a mirror to show them possibility and be the invitation and the example. But mentors are such an underrated part of the game when it comes to self-improvement. Why are we here? What's the big purpose of life? To learn how to love, learn how to grow up. That's not woo-woo John Lennon. That's science.
Our lives are often filled with worry and chaos as the media propagates one negative story after another, bringing divide and tension within topics such as politics, religion, and race relations. These stories fuel hatred and confusion while people continue to live in fear. Yet through all this negative energy, many are delivering messages of wisdom and hope, encouraging positive change, and that's something I'm aiming to do. My name is Roger Brooks, and I'm hopeful for our future, but we must be the change and not be a spectator in life, looking from the outside in. For as long as I could remember, I've been fascinated by people's stories. Stories speak to us, and since the beginning of time, the human race has prospered by passing down wisdom told through the essence of story. It's a way for people to aspire to become the hero they know they could be, seeing their higher self through the wisdom of others. What started out as a hobby has quickly turned into my life mission, and as I deliver a new guest each Sunday, I'll aim to prompt the questions you may be thinking, and through the power of listening, I'll allow the guest to speak and articulate their points of view in order to give you the headspace you need to realize your own hero's journey. We are one race. We are one people. Help spread the word about American Real, and together, let's make great stories go viral to inspire, enlighten, and empower those we love and the masses we hope to reach.
This week on American Real, we bring you Mr. Peter Sage. Our interview went for about 3 hours, so we're bringing it to you in 2 parts. Peter has been a serial entrepreneur, an author, philosopher, and teacher. He has even spent time in prison, and he shares all of this through his new book, The Inside Track. This episode with Peter Sage is brought to you by Audible. You can go to audibletrial.com/Peter Sage to receive a free copy of his book. All of the details are below in the show notes. So sit back, relax as I bring you the very unique, the very smart Peter Sage. This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is Peter Sage, entrepreneur, best-selling author, philosopher, and deep explorer of consciousness. Peter, welcome to the show.
What an absolute honor to be here. And I love what you've done here, Roger. I really have. I've been really looking forward to this interview for a while, and I think I know you have as well. So
I have.
We finally made it happen here in America.
In America. And I was mentioning, I interviewed David Meltzer from California a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things I said to him, and I feel the same right now with you, is that when you look up to someone, when you hear them speak over time, when you read books that they recommend, and then you have the chance to meet them, when you're able to manifest a reality like we have today, there's nothing like it. But my question is, for you, what is it like for you to talk to someone who has benefited from your work?
Very humbling. It really is. It reminds me that, that there's a purpose to what I do. And hopefully it's certainly not about me. I have an identity which I use and I adopt and I channel through. I'm a big believer in the power of identity. And my identity, I recently, I'm always tweaking it. In fact, I've shifted a word in it recently. And but I am a divine and guided soul that acts as an open channel for God's love, a powerful agent of positive change who is born to reveal the greatness in others. That's my sense of identity statement. So, when I hear somebody that's done something with some of the wisdom I've been fortunate enough to channel through or pass on based on some of the shoulders of the giants I've been fortunate enough to stand on, then it's it just shows you that those ripples of contributions go out and touch lives that sometimes we'll never meet or never know. And how can you not feel satisfied when that happens? That's purpose at its highest level. That's taking you out of the equation. That's giving life meaning. That's saying, wow. To being able to pass that on, that torch of greatness to others and have them light their own sort of fire. That's why I was born. That's why I'm here, and I have such a strong sense of purpose to that. So, I you can probably tell that lights me up.
Wonderful. And you say the word channeling, and you say the word love, and these are things that are more recent to me. I probably lived the first part of my life definitely ego focused, definitely driven by monetary things and material. But I made a shift several years ago, and now, and it takes time and work and effort, but the channeling is what I'm trying to do. But I feel it. I feel the improvement with this show. I feel it with bringing guests on like you, so I can't wait to have a great conversation and talk more about this and talk about love. Because that's why we're here.
Absolutely.
So look, and the reason you're here in Florida is you came down to surprise one of your mentors, George Zalicki, as I understand, and you posted yesterday an Instagram video. You were out on his boat, My Way, and would just like to talk a little bit about George, how he's impacted you and your life, and let's just talk about mentors in general and how purposeful they could be in someone's life.
Wow, George, I call George probably the biggest kept secret in personal growth. And it was his 80th birthday 2 days ago. He had no idea that his wife had put a surprise party together, and he had friends. He's an icon and a legend, mainly in the MLM industry, in the network marketing industry. Yes. He's been top of the compensation plan every company he's joined, and for the last 20 plus years, he's been with ACN. And he's recently retired, but he would speak in front of crowds of 20,000 people and move them in such a way. And I remember when I was 18 years old, and I put a video on my YouTube channel about this, about how I met George. In fact, if you go to his website and look at testimonials, the video is there. Right. And I had such a shift because he taught me things that I'd never learned in school, things that I'd never even been close to understanding, that was so liberating, so freeing, and opened me up into realizing the power of personal growth. And it was Jim Rohn that said, formal education may help you make a living, which is doubtful today. We've got more people leaving university and college qualified to be a barrister that can't get a job as a barista, and saddled with 40, 50 grand or more in college debt. So the old way doesn't work. But he said, informal education will help you make a fortune. And I took that to heart, because formal education I was no good at. I couldn't spell MBA. I was out of school at 16. And so for me, I threw myself into personal growth, and when I discovered George at 18, I was sitting in a seminar and he was there and he spoke, and wow, I just became an avid student of his work. And yes, I've spent many years alongside Tony Robbins, traveling around the world with Tony at his events as a trainer. And I still to this day credit George as having the biggest impact on my psychology than anybody alive. And to be able to come here, because 80 years old, you never know.
Sure.
Is it going to be an 81st? Is it going to be a 90th? I mean, you don't know. Nothing's certain in life.
Right.
So I really wouldn't have missed this for the world. And yeah, very, very humbled to have spent some time as his student, and again, to be able to carry the torch in some of the ways. But mentors are such an underrated part of the game when it comes to self-improvement. And it's kind of like, when you have a relationship with somebody, pick the right one,
Right.
if it comes to a long-term partner. And knowing that mentors can have a massive impact, don't put them on a pedestal. That's a big challenge I see with a lot of people, because the second you put somebody on a pedestal, you automatically, by default, minimize your own sense of self.
Yes.
Which is one thing a mentor should be telling you not to do. So go seek people that are willing to give advice, not opinion. Advice means that they've walked the path that you're seeking to walk. They've fallen down and made the mistakes and learned their lessons, and they're willing to pass on that in order to help you not fall down as often. And know that there's no commercial agenda, hidden bias, or anything like that. They just want to serve and give the best of their experience. Now, opinion is everything else. Mm-hmm. And so most people seek advice and settle for opinion, and they don't know how to tell the difference. So when choosing a mentor, don't get somebody just because they have, I want a Ferrari and they drive a Ferrari. Well, the way that they bought their Ferrari may not be conducive to the way that your values stack up. Ask better questions when it comes to selection, and be humble enough to want to learn. So mentors are a big underrated part of the game. If you don't have a mentor, then go find one.
And it's okay to have multiple, correct?
Oh, of course. I've had many mentors, still do have several mentors, because nobody's an expert in every area.
Right.
I have a mentor for relationships, I have a mentor for business, I have a mentor for my psychology. So all of those people play a role in my life, and that's part of the game.
Yeah. Peter, for younger people especially, if they've never had a mentor, if they're intimidated, what advice would you give? Say they're targeting someone in their community that they would love to meet and get to know and have them be a mentor to them. What advice would you give them to take that leap of faith?
Well, there's a couple of things here. When I say get one, traditionally, we've had to go find people and try to get under their wing. From Thomas Edison and his mentee that became his business partner.
Right.
That was the traditional route, and that took persistence, it took humility, it took willingness to add value and come to the table with something and be a willing student, because every mentor loves a willing student. Nothing turns us off more than being able to give advice and then have somebody ignore it, go out or not value it.
Right.
So, but today we don't need that. I've got several mentors I've never met. I've got several mentors that aren't alive. You now have access to information at the push of a button that generations of human history have never had access to. You go to the great Napoleon Hill, and he had his mental boardroom, and that was something that I've been practicing for many years. And when I was younger, I would go through a routine where I would visualize, I would walk into an elevator, and I would go to the top floor of this penthouse. And while I was going up, my sort of mental preparation was I'll be looking at adjusting my tie in the mirror in the elevator, and the door would open, this floor-to-ceiling glass with this big table, and all my mentors were sitting around. And there was Sir Richard Branson, and there was Tony Robbins. This is way before I met Tony. There was Master Yoda. There was whoever represents what I felt would be something that could give me the advice as a young man I wanted. And I would walk in and I'd sit at the head of the table and I'd put whatever it was on the table of what I wanted some advice about, and I would go around the room and I'd be amazed at what would come back. Now today, and I'm sure we may get into this later on, when you understand the nature of reality in digital physics and how information, or what Napoleon Hill would call infinite intelligence, quantum physics would call the field, the spiritual master would call the Akashic records, it doesn't matter. There's a database of information from which we draw. that doesn't come from the brain. And so, yeah, science say, oh, it's just your imagination. Well, they don't even know what imagination is. They've never been able to validate that the brain produces consciousness, because it doesn't. And the brain doesn't produce consciousness any more than a television produces programs or a radio produces music. So, yeah, going in and having this mental boardroom and starting off with your imagination, create some questions, imagine what they'd say back, and then let nature take its course, and you'd be amazed. When we're dreaming, sometimes we have dreams and we thought, wow, what happened in that dream was so intelligent, I couldn't have written the script for that.
Right.
That was way beyond my level of intelligence. It's coming from a deeper source.
Yeah.
So you can have a mental boardroom. You've got so much at your disposal when you buy into that and you go into there. And I've had so much advice and wisdom from fictional characters from the mind of George Lucas that have served me well throughout my life. So there is no excuse. But if you have somebody in your local community you want to approach, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. They're too busy. In which case, follow them anyway. Invite them to lunch. That's how I give a lot of my advice over the years. A lot of people that could probably benefit from some of my coaching probably couldn't afford it. And I'm a great believer, if people don't pay, they don't pay attention.
Right.
So I value myself, and that's why I charge for my one-on-one exceptionally high rate, because I'm worth it and I'm good enough. And if you want to see an area where people destroy themselves, it's the area of self-worth. And you want to see how people benchmark that, see what they charge for their time. So there's a lot of the community, which is why I put so much on YouTube to try to help so many people. But sometimes people would call up and say, look, I really want to have some time with you. And I don't do this as much now because I'm traveling a lot, but I said, look, a guy's got to eat. If I'm in a certain location and I give you that information and you show up and you take me to lunch, providing it's not a place where we have to supersize our meal.
Right.
You got me for 45 minutes, so I have you, ask me some questions, and treat me to a meal, and I'll give you some advice. And I've helped a lot of people that way, and got some great meals.
Yeah.
But it's not about that. It's about they will come, they will put the stuff on the table, and I will be able to help them get to a place where they can come and afford a high-level mentor, whether it's me or somebody else.
I think in general, people want to help other people. So if you do ask them to lunch, I would say 7, 8 out of 10 people would likely willingly do that.
It's funny, I came here a couple of days ago and I was tired, and it was a long flight, and I'd been working in London before, and I got on off the plane, I went through border control, I came to the hotel, I went to check in, it was, I don't know what it was, like 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, no wallet, no cash, no credit cards, nothing, left it on the plane.
Wow.
Very rare of me to do it. I usually have SOP, standard operating procedures, when I get up and check and what have you, but no, for whatever reason, tired. I don't do jet lag. I've got my anti-jet lag belief system firmly installed. Never done jet lag.
Good.
But for whatever reason, wallet was gone. So the only reason they let me in the hotel, because it was prepaid.
Okay.
So anyway, surrender, let it go. My wallet decides to take a holiday. I'm on holiday, why not? Called the airline next morning, and they said, oh, well, unfortunately, the lost and found. I called the lost and found at the airport at Fort Lauderdale. They said, no, it's the airline that deals with it. They played ping pong. I thought, I've just got to get there. So I showed up at the airport, and while I went to the airport, the taxi driver said, oh, where are you going? I said, I'm going for lost and found. He said, forget it. I've never taken anyone to the airport that's recovered anything. He says, the people that clean the airplane, they don't earn much. If they find a wallet, it's happy days. It's a month's wages. So I'm like, that's his model of the world, it's his reality, love him for it, send him so, but that's certainly not influencing my level of certainty. And if the wallet's gone, the wallet's gone. Clearly somebody needed it more than I did. So, I'll figure it out. They have a free breakfast here, I'll stock up. So I get to the airport, I find one of the airline staff, and I say, look, I left my wallet on the plane yesterday flying in from London. She's gone, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. She says, I hope there wasn't cash in it. I said, it's about $1,000 in cash and all my credit cards. And she rolled her eyes, she says, oh, I'm so sorry. And she goes off, comes back 10 minutes later with my wallet, with all of the cash, credit cards, everything, not a dime taken out. And my response to her when she went away, before she brought the wallet back, she says, oh, I'm so sorry, don't get your hopes up. I said, I have faith in humanity.
I'm glad you told that story, and I'm glad that you told us what you said, because I've been struggling sometimes with what to say to people when there's something negative thrown at you. How did she respond to that?
In all fairness, other people's opinions are none of my business. And yeah, she probably dismissed it, or she may have had compassion. That's a reflection of where she's at on her journey and her level of consciousness.
Okay.
That's not a reflection of my willingness to want to impose on that,
Okay.
but it was just my natural response. Yeah, I've got faith in humanity, and yeah, I've got faith in the fact that if somebody needs my wallet more than I do, then good luck. Yeah, maybe I help their kid out with an extra birthday present.
Right. But is that triggered in you now when there is a negative response? Do you come back with something positive every time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, even if it's internal. Again, my job here isn't to convince anybody. I've got no right to change anybody else's mind or their model of the world. They're on their path. My job is to hold up a mirror to show them possibility and be the invitation and the example.
Yes.
And then let go.
Yes.
And you know, when I say I have faith in humanity, in England we have a lot of the self-service checkouts at the supermarket. Now it's coming just like the check-in, self-check-in at the airports now, so they can do away with the labour. And of course you get a certain percentage of people that will take advantage of that and not put all of the things through the scanner. And you know, but the vast majority of people are honest people. The vast majority of humanity, given the chance, would rather do a good thing than a bad thing. Yeah, and we've all been on both sides of the spectrum as part of our growth. But you know, I have faith in humanity at that level. If you approach a mentor and you ask them to lunch, a lot of them will want to give help. And some of them are going to be the kind of people that used to, you know, put things in the bag without scanning them, and it's all still about them and their ego, and they haven't got time for some low life or whatever. That's okay. That's their journey.
Right.
It's not a reflection of you. But as Michael Jordan says, you'll always miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right.
So keep asking.
Right. Wow. So you touched on visualization and the mental boardroom. I love that. How far do you take that?
In what way?
Is this part of your daily life where you're visualizing the next goal or the next mission for you?
Visualization, and again, this is a primary tenet of personal growth. It's a primary tenet of the whole law of attraction and all of the metaphysical stuff that traditional Newtonian physics ignores and poo-poos. And we can have a whole conversation around that, because I've got a lot of strong things to say around traditional science and its unwillingness to include metaphysics. And yeah, that's yeah, we'll get onto that, I'm sure. But visualization is proven to be such a powerful tool, and it makes total sense when you understand the nature of how it works at a higher level of physics. Because we live in a physical reality. Our experience of what this day-to-day life is through a physical reality. Now, it's completely subjective. There is no out there, as you know, a pretty smart guy called Einstein once said. We only perceive it to be out there. And it's the most improvable hypothesis you could ever put on the table, because when traditional physics deals only with subjective, so they can't deal with, objective. They can't deal with the subjective.
Okay.
But does the moon exist when you're not looking at it? Well, how could you ever prove?
Right.
Oh, well, we measure it when we're not there. Well, no, it's being measured. If it's being measured, it's being rendered into your data stream, just like a computer screen. If you're going through a computer game, and we understand virtual realities now, because kids today grow up and they've got no issues. Of course they understand virtual reality. But you know, a traditional scientist that's still wedded to the significance of their model of the world and doesn't want to give it up because it falls outside of their traditional paradigm, are coming from a place where it's not real science anymore. And what do I mean by that? It's dogma. Real science really should continually evolve its hypothesis to match the consistent data. And what traditional science has done for the last 100 years is continually ignore the consistent data to protect its hypothesis, which has no basis in reality. You familiar with the double slit experiment?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can explain that in 5 minutes to somebody and they'll get it in a heartbeat. But traditional science will ignore it because it's an anomaly. Is it a wave? Is it a particle? It's a wavicle.
So science is not keeping up with the times?
No, as the great Feynman said, you know, science progresses one funeral at a time.
Yeah.
And it's not about science, it's about, to explain it easily, the physical matter reality that we have is a subset of something more fundamental. And what that superset is consciousness. Consciousness is primary. Physical matter reality is secondary. If you look at a particle deep enough, there's nothing there. We know that. It doesn't exist. The perception when we step back is, oh look, we get data coming through two channels, the physical channel for the 5 physical senses, and we get data come through the mental channels. But when you go to sleep at night and you start dreaming, what happens? You switch to a different data stream. Where does the body go? In your experience of it, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. You're tuned into a different radio station. Now, the rule set that governs the dream world, or that data stream, isn't as tight as this one. The physical matter reality has a tight rule set that's governed predominantly by our three sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, which we've managed to reverse engineer the rule set of, and to such a degree we can repair a human body or put a guy on the moon. Mm-hmm. Very tight. And we know those laws, physical laws, and it's very hard to circumvent them. It can be done. Visualization is a part of that, where it can influence the probability. Because when you realize what particles aren't solid little ball bearing type things with electrons spinning around them that are solid. We now know that. Anyone trying to disagree with that just is dogmatic. Particles are probability distributions. And this is a digital based reality. It fits the model better than any other argument you could put on the table. And without getting too deep or off track here, I'll give you a clue. So let's say this reality is a computer game. Let's just use that as a reference because people can understand it.
Sure.
So we have rules that govern that game. Yes. So if you take World of Warcraft, and I'm paraphrasing from one of the other mentors I studied under, Tom Campbell, who wrote the book My Big Toe, Theory of Everything. I was with Tom a couple of weeks ago in England. Amazing guy, ex-NASA nuclear physicist. This guy's not a mug. One of the founding scientists of the Monroe Institute, one of the most leading researchers in the world on consciousness. If you're not familiar with Tom's work, go check him out. It will change your life when you have a context of understanding reality.
Okay, we'll check out that book for sure.
But and most of his work's on YouTube. His book's like 700 pages.
Okay.
But for me, if you have the computer game, let's say we're playing the game of life, and if you were to see that on a computer and you have the joystick, there's rules that govern how those characters move. You can't just teleport from here to here, right? Because the rule set doesn't allow for that in that computer game, whether you're playing Sims, World of Warcraft, whatever it may be. Your elf cannot walk through a tree because the rules stipulate that you can't walk through a tree.
Right.
And we can't walk through a wall because the physical rule set of this reality says we can't walk through a wall.
Right.
It's buttoned down. But to the computer, that's a different game. The computer is the superset to the game being the subset. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you take something like non-locality, which Einstein predicted, he just couldn't validate because we didn't have the technology back then. You can transcend the speed of light. Now the physical world is governed by the speed of light. That's what Einstein said. M equals mc squared. Nothing that we know of can move faster than 186,282.4 miles a second. That's the governing limiter on how this rule set works. And if you overlay that to a digital simulation, it's very simple. It's the refresh rate.
Okay.
So 10 to the minus 44 seconds, it moves so quickly that we perceive it to be fluid.
Okay.
But it's the computer's update rate. Right? But if you go to the World of Warcraft, you can't materialize an elf from here to here because the rules don't allow it. That's governed by, let's call it the speed of light.
Okay.
Right? But to the computer, is there any difference between a pixel in one side of the screen or a pixel in the other side of the screen? So we can take two atoms now, we can actually pair those, separate them by distances, vast distances, galaxy, and they will instantaneously communicate because they're now transcending the subset and we're dealing with the superset. Does that make sense?
Yes. That's incredible.
You take the double slit experiment. Here's a very easy way to do it, right? I don't have a phone on me, but if I was to hold up an iPhone and I had an icon, here's my iPhone, and I had an icon on there, say the Safari icon, and I was to swipe that and it would disappear off screen. Where did it go? Now, in the brain's three-dimensional projection of reality, which is what we experience here, we kind of say, oh, it's over here. Well, it's not here because there's no phone there, right? But we swipe it back, it appears in the exact same space. Why? It's been measured. Therefore, it can't come back in a different location. The rules don't allow that. But where did it go? It went into a state of possibility. Wasn't being measured. How do we remeasure it? We bring it back into the data stream. So what's behind you right now in your data stream doesn't exist. It's off screen. So therefore, it would exist as a wave, not a particle, in your data stream. If you were to turn around and look behind you, that would essentially be being rendered back into your screen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the double slit. It's pretty simple when you understand it.
Yes.
When you're not looking at it, it's off screen, it's not being measured. It doesn't take computer processing power to measure or manage everything simultaneously, only what's being fed into your data stream.
So how do we bring that into our reality once we understand it?
Well, here's the thing. What's the traditional scientific understanding of how the universe was created? How it came about?
The Big Bang.
The Big Bang.
Yeah.
What happened before the Big Bang? Don't talk to us about that. What does traditional science say? Give us one free miracle, the universe magics itself out of nothing, and we'll tell you why you're not allowed to have any more miracles.
Right.
Right, that's the traditional mantra of science, right? So, but there was a massive influx of power, and the universe unfolded from a zero state to where it is right now. And we can pretty much, through reverse engineering our rule sets, tell you what happened in the first quadrillionth of a quintillionth of a second. 10 to the 34th power. We can pretty much tell you what happened at zero state at that level and how it unfolded to create this reality. We've been pretty smart to engineer that, and science at that level is brilliant. But what happened before? We don't know. Don't ask questions. Don't hypothesize. That's for the religion, spirituality, metaphysics, just don't knock on the door. But if this is a digital reality, which we're almost certainly proven it has been, then if you take a computer that has, let's say, the World of Warcraft on it, but it's not switched on. Where does World of Warcraft exist? In a state of possibility that's already been pre-coded under a rule set. What does it require to activate? Someone presses the on button. What happens? A massive influx of power, and then all of that pre-coded stuff unfolds on a rule set that we then see manifest as a game. Sounds pretty much like the Big Bang to me. Stacks up every line.
Yes.
So you take people like Elon Musk. Elon's quite a big proponent of the virtual reality theory. My own take on this, and same as Tom's take, is he's chasing the wrong carrot, because he hypothesizes that a future version of ourselves has created the 21st century game, and we're back to, or a future race of aliens, which is pretty much the same thing, but with just a bit more imagination. Where that theory falls down so hard is that you can't split consciousness. Consciousness is primary. So how can a future version of me in the future that's conscious be playing the conscious version of me here? You can't. You can't split that. So no, we are consciousness that is currently playing in this avatar called a body, in this virtual reality called life on planet Earth in the physical universe. So coming full circle here, and this is why I've taken the viewers on this journey, because there's a very big point to this. Virtual realities don't just create themselves. They don't pop into existence for no reason. Now, what have we done traditionally over time throughout human history when we don't understand something? And we project what we don't know, what we do know, into what we don't know to try to give it meaning to reconcile the mind. Right? So, 30,000 years ago, it rained, we wondered why. Was God mad and angry and crying, or was he sending us a gift to fill up the rivers?
Right.
We didn't know, so what do? We made stuff up. We projected what we do know into what we don't know, which is why it's most likely that God didn't create man in his own image. Man created God in his own image. And this is not wanting to step on traditional toes here, it's just giving people a new way to hold stuff. Because that version of the projection contained a lot of the characteristics of the consciousness of humanity at the time, which included anger, wrath, rules, all of that, fear more than love, which doesn't seem, really in line with what the people like Jesus or Krishna, Allah, Buddha were teaching. Jesus taught unconditional love. That was his message. Contrast that to Buddha taught enlightenment, slightly different. But Jesus taught unconditional love. Not like if you don't do as you're told, my dad's going to squash you. That message doesn't resonate. That's a projection of the anthropomorphic issues of mankind at the time. So coming back to the main point, realities don't create themselves. What's the purpose of being here? Humanity has looked up to the sky throughout human history and asked that question: why am I here? What's the big questions that we don't want to really answer? So we go to evolution. Evolution exists. We've got 400 million years of fossil records that kind of validate that. And whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter. What is the process that we've uncovered? Well, the purpose of evolution is to evolve to higher states of complexity. So you take an amoeba or 50 trillion cells of a human body. If you took 50 trillion amoebas and one food source, you've got a war. You got 50 trillion cells operating as a human body and one fuel source, and you need cooperation in order to survive. You're not going to have the liver team up with the spleen to try to get more hemoglobin, than the than the heart and the lungs. It's like that doesn't happen. Right. So the purpose of evolution is to evolve, which requires higher levels of complexity in order to survive. With me so far?
Yes.
What happens if you extrapolate the destination of cooperation? You hit one word: love. Why are we here? What's the big purpose of life? To learn how to love, learn how to grow up. That's not woo-woo John Lennon. That's science. That's why we're here. We're evolving into higher levels of unconditional love, which every spiritual teacher and master on the planet has always said, and less levels of fear, which if you look around today, especially in the US, is the root cause of pretty much all of the suffering. People coming from a fear-based mentality,
sure,
rather than a love-based mentality.
Right. Okay, that's deep, but I'm following you. How did you figure all this out? Because it makes so much sense. And I've heard bits and pieces of this philosophy over time, but the way you just explained it is amazing. How does that come to you? Is it all of your years of learning? Is it very crystal clear?
It makes a lot of sense to me, therefore I can be congruent. One of the very few gifts that I tend to have is the ability to take complex things and break them down and use metaphors for people to understand. And metaphors are so powerful because that's how we've learnt through stories throughout human history.
Yes.
If you take, you take the Bible and you take something like Genesis.
Yeah.
The reason so many congregations around the world these days are declining in numbers is because the modern level of people growing up are saying, hang on a minute, you want me to believe that some cosmic Jewish guy who was his own dad, that if you surrender to him telepathically, will remove a curse from your body that was put there before I was born because a woman made out of a rib ate from a magical tree because of a talking snake.
Right.
And can you see why some people are starting to question that?
Yeah.
Now, the reason they question it is because they kind of miss the point. And that is that 150 years ago, 2% of humanity was literate. 98% weren't, couldn't read or write. It was a privilege of the chosen people, the scholars, the upper echelons, the people chosen for political or the village elders or whatever it may be. The rabbis, the ministers, the royal families, they were the educated people that learned to read or write.
And that's why it was illegal to own a Bible even.
And so if you go to a point where 98% of the people, how have they learned throughout human history? Around the campfire, through stories. And what are the best way to teach stories? Metaphors.
Yeah.
So you take the Garden of Eden, it's an amazing lesson, it's an amazing metaphor, and here's my interpretation of it. You've got the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. Don't eat from the tree of knowledge, that's bad. Eat from the tree of life, that is good. Now, what's it really trying to say? My message is to many people is you were born good enough. You were born a miracle. You were born way past the primary fear that people have, which is the fear that we're not enough. Mm-hmm. That's the primary fear that screws us all up.
Sure.
The fear we're not enough, and therefore we won't be loved. And how do most people try to get over that? By acquiring knowledge to be smart enough so that they can actually feel good enough. And guess what? Eat from the tree of life. You don't need the tree of knowledge. You were born good enough. If you come from a place of wholeness, you can go choose to learn something. But if you're choosing to learn something in order to validate that you're as smart as your brother, in order to validate that you'd be good enough for daddy's love, in order to validate that now your teachers were wrong about you, then you're coming from a place of lack, insecurity, fear. I don't need a talking snake to tell me that.
Right.
But that was kind of the message.
Right.
Now, if you've got a certain passion, you need to learn certain things, and school can be good for that. Now, I don't want a surgeon to take care of my kid that's not been through 6 years of surgery school,
Right.
Yeah, that has a place where you're learning specific skills, but I need to go to college to get a degree in some subject I'm never going to use so that I feel smart because I've got a piece of paper signed by somebody I've never met to validate my memory on answering questions that are not useful in life. Give me a break.
Yeah.
So, if you go to the spirituality side, most of what the Bible says is incredible wisdom wrapped up in stories and metaphors that were designed to teach people at the level of consciousness that they were at how to move to the next level. But for me to have a level of dogma around, no, if you don't believe in a talking snake, then you're going to go to hell, I'm sorry, we're past that.
Right.
And just as a horse and cart was a great vehicle, Roger, to get from A to B back then.
At the time, sure.
It doesn't mean a horse and cart is bad. But how most religions, if you analyze them, were created was to fill the gap of knowledge as to how do we make sense of the non-physical. So what do? We come up with stuff, we make stuff up that makes sense of it. And a horse and cart at the time was great. But that gets superseded by a car, by a train, by a plane, by a rocket ship.
Right.
And today, religion is declining because people are starting to understand that the spiritual message that the masters taught is incredible. But we don't need to wrap it up in the dogma of what essentially religion has become, which is the institutional consequence of spiritual truth.
And what's your sense on, and not predicting the future, but I'm curious on what you think will happen. So take the Catholic Church or Christianity. Will they evolve over time? Maybe it takes hundreds of years, or will it just continue to decline?
They don't have hundreds of years. The challenge is this. Humanity's pace of learning has accelerated exponentially and will continue to do so. And so it will start to polarize even more. You'll have people say, hang on a minute. Yeah, now don't get me wrong, I'm not invalidating God, I just don't like using that label, because the travesty of humanity is we've gone to war and killed each other for centuries over whose version of that label is right.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. So, whatever you want to call it, I call it life with a capital L. Who's the big programmer that created the digital reality, or team of programmers? I don't get it. It's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
I'm here to learn how to evolve and become love, not kill somebody or blame them for not believing my beliefs. 1,000 years ago, we were at that stage. 100 years ago, we're at that stage. And the church has evolved over that level of mentality. There is only one true God. Well, give me a break.
Yeah.
And if you're not part of the card-carrying club, you don't get into the clubhouse at the end of the game. I don't buy that.
Right.
That's not unconditional love.
Right.
That's conditional love based on fear. If they don't evolve and start breaking down their own level of dogma, and it's healthy to be open-minded skeptic. If you're a closed-minded skeptic, you're dogmatic. If you're open-minded and not skeptical, you're gullible.
So you need that happy medium.
You need to be asking questions and trust but verify.
Right.
And for me, I see the biggest cause of suffering, misery, and war over human history has been arguing over that label and whose rules for that are right. And if you don't follow my rules, then you're lost. So I don't buy into the rule book around that, because no teacher, Jesus didn't say read a book. He didn't say show up every Sunday and worship me and put money in the pot. That was created after us.
Right.
He didn't start writing about himself 30 years after his death. So does that invalidate the message? Of course not. But you take these spiritual masters, they come at a calibration of so high. But we can only hear, Roger, from the level that we're at.
Yeah.
And you talk about the word surrender. What did Jesus say? Turn the other cheek. You try saying that to a US Marine. They're not hearing it from that level. If you calibrate at a low level of consciousness, like pride, and again, there's no good or bad, it's just part of the journey. What's great? Better, an acorn or a sapling or an oak tree? What's better, a 5-year-old, a 20-year-old, or a 30-year-old? No. They're just further levels of expression of their own potential. So somebody who calibrates at a low level of consciousness in victim mode, or somebody that's walking around with a high ego in pride, it's not right or wrong, they're just at different levels of the progression of consciousness, that's all. There for the grace of God go I.
Wow.
So if you can get to a place where, you hear the word surrender, as a Marine, you're going to say, no freaking way. Fix bayonets and charge. If you raise your level of consciousness, you'll hear surrender to surrendering to the wisdom of life, surrendering to the current, stopping resistance to what is. And yet you surrender your resistance to fear. A lot of times people aren't happy because they're trying to be happy. No, they're just not surrendering the blocks to happiness.
Right.
And at the highest level of consciousness, you're going to surrender to the inevitability of love. But you can only hear that from the level you're at.
Right.
And the spiritual masters taught from here, which is there any reason why or any wonder why the interpretations were so varied throughout those levels? Because they were being interpreted from people that weren't calibrating here. Make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Gratitude. You talk about it a lot. When did gratitude become important to you and part of your daily practice?
Again, there's an evolution over time.
Sure.
I didn't wake up one day and suddenly put gratitude on my to-do list. I think that you hear it a lot in personal growth, and this year for me is 30 years in personal growth.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
17 when
That's right.
I got into that, and I'm 47 in a few months, and so I think it's impossible not to get into the personal growth genre of self-discovery and not come across the power of gratitude and the healing power of gratitude and the manifestational power of gratitude. And so for me, it comes down to the fact that many people don't realize that the mind is like a compass needle. It can only point in one direction at a time. And the state that most people want is joy. They sometimes think it's happiness. Happiness is fleeting, it's transitory. Happiness is simply the byproduct of thinking happy thoughts. That's it. You want more happiness in your life? Easy. Point your compass needle in the direction of thinking happy thoughts, you'll be happier. But the thing is, we're not designed to feel happiness all of the time. Happiness is a state of euphoric, sort of transitory feelings of niceness where we're not scared anymore, we're enjoying ourselves. Joy is what I see something different. Fulfillment is at a higher level. And so you can be in a state of joy even though something that is sad. A mother who's seeing her child leave the nest and go off on their own can feel joyful even though there's a sadness to the fact that they're missing their kid. It's not about being happy. Joy transcends that, it supersedes that. So if gratitude is a prerequisite to joy, you can't have a loving and a fearful thought live in the same room. You can't have your compass needle point at joy and point at sadness at the same time. In terms of it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, right?
Right? You can't have that. Happiness and anger are just not bedmates. So if you can get the fastest access to high frequency emotional states of joy, fulfillment, humility, peace, love, gratitude acts as a shoehorn into that. And the reason it's so easy is because you can always find something to be grateful for. Always. The fact you woke up this morning, the fact you can take a breath, the fact you're born in a country or a time in human history where our ancestors have dreamed about from, since the dawn of time. If you can't find something to be grateful for, you're just not practiced on where to look. The muscle gets built when you can be grateful for things other people resent. And that's really a real test in your own personal level of where you are on on your journey.
Yeah.
Once you can be grateful for the things that other people complain about because you see a higher level of wisdom. And that really requires some fundamental belief shifts. And there's two that I pick out specifically that really demark the journey of personal growth for many people that I see. And I'm happy to share them.
Please.
Because these two again, shifts in awareness can be the difference between a life of misery, struggle, and effort, and a life of fulfillment and flow.
Okay.
And the first real demarcation on the maturation of the human psyche, where people grow up emotionally, is where you finally become comfortable with not being liked. You're okay with not being liked. You realize that your job isn't to run around looking for somewhere to replug in your umbilical cord to try to get love. That no matter what you've done, no matter what you've not done, you're worthy of love. And therefore, you're not trying to become everybody's friend, you're just trying to show up as an authentic level of who you are, and whoever chooses to befriend you at that point is great. But if they don't, it's a reflection of where they're at on their journey, not the fact that you're not likable. So, learning to be okay not being liked is a big stepping stone on the ladder of personal growth for many people. We should teach that in school before people leave. Otherwise, they spend their life trying to validate themselves through
so true.
Fitting into the approval strategy of others, or their perception of the approval strategy of others. Fast track to misery. The second key awareness is a big one. And this is so transformational when people get it. And that is when you wake up to the realization that life is not a comfort-centric experience, but a growth-centric experience.
Okay.
Everything in nature grows and contributes or is taken out of the food chain, and we're no different. So when you realize that life is a growth-centric experience, you're no longer seeking comfort. An athlete doesn't seek comfort if they want a gold medal. And how do they approach that? If they're committed to wanting to get the medal, to win the marathon of life, or to get that, stand on that podium, they're happy for the blood, sweat, and tears.
That's right.
They're like, bring it on. They want to hire a personal trainer that's going to make them throw up.
Uncomfortable every day.
Not somebody that's going to, sit them down and tell them why it's okay not to train today. Now, if you don't have a context for understanding that, life becomes, how do I avoid the workouts? Why am I being told by this guy to run on the treadmill till I puke? Why am I being told to lift the bar that I can't lift? Why am I sore every day because this jackass is trying to punish me? If you didn't have a context for understanding the nature of the athlete and the gym and the medal, you'd be trying to hide behind the barbell so we didn't see you.
That's right. That's right.
That's how most people live life. They're trying to avoid the workouts. They're trying to avoid the lessons, the toughness. They don't know they're here to grow and evolve into a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
And the strongest trees grow in the strongest winds, not the best soil. So when adversity shows up, which it will, which it does, which it has to by design, when we get faced with lifting the weight on the bar of life, if you're coming from a comfort-centric experience, you're bitching about the event, you're bitching about the trainer, you're bitching about circumstances. But if you're coming at it from understanding that life is a growth-centric experience, it's like, dude, it's time for the workout.
Right.
I've gone for the last 5 weeks and no shit showing up in my life. Great. Right. Workout time, lift the bar.
Yep.
Yeah, my girlfriend just left me. My biggest customer just went to my greatest competition. You're lifting the weight on the bar. Who shows up in those moments is who you're defined as. Not when the sun's shining, there's a margarita in your hand. So knowing that life is a growth-centric experience is a huge transition from bitching about everything to being grateful for the challenges that most people would resent.
Yeah. So glad you just talked about that. When I posted, I have a private Facebook group at American Real, and my first video for this year was the need to really remain uncomfortable, because I feel myself personally, as soon as I get comfortable in something, there's no growth. So exactly what you just said. So I'm trying to talk to the people that are associated with American Real that it's good to be uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable, that's when you actually can grow. If you get too caught up and too comfortable and not go to the gym or not, create something new, that's not a good sign. I see, conformity.
The challenge is if people don't have a context for understanding that, they'll resist it. And in life, context is definitive.
Yes.
Now, if you're a parent and you see somebody grab their 5-year-old and yank them really hard, you're going to have an immediate judgment about what you just saw.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that self-talk will start coming up. Just notice. But if you just realize they just pulled them out of the way of a bus, you go, oh my God, that parent was so brave and so quick to react, and my goodness, you go up and say, well done.
Sure, context.
Context is definitive. So if you don't have a context for life, and you still think it's a comfort-centric experience, you're going to say, well, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, well, whatever. No, my life sucks, I just want some comfort. Well, no, all you're doing is resisting the gym. But if you can be comfortable as an athlete, so if you're lifting the weight on the bar and you take the perspective of a comfort-centric experience, go to the muscle fiber. What's happening? I'm being broken down. Mm-hmm. This is painful. Mm-hmm. Send signals to the brain. Tell them to stop. What's going on? What are you doing? You're destroying me down here. But you shift the contextual awareness and you raise the level of consciousness to that of the athlete. You're proud that you're trying to bust out that last rep. You're proud that you just got a personal best. You're proud that you squeeze every last drop out of that before your arms collapse and you can't lift them for an hour. Now you've got a pat on the back from the personal trainer. So where are you in life? Are you walking around as the muscle fiber? Are you walking around as the athlete? Taking on this incredible journey of growth that we have so that we can become more of who we are to give to the world? Or am I going to shirk from it the second somebody puts weight on the bar I don't think I can lift? Give me a break.
And Peter, why do so many people conform to this? I mean, life, I see a vast majority, and I was part of it, so I need to preface that. Vast majority of people conform. I used to listen to Earl Nightingale a lot.
Greatest secret.
The greatest secret. And he talked about that. That if you conform to life, what are you living for? We have to be creatures of our own creativity. But how can we accelerate this as a world community? How can we accelerate educating more people?
Well, I've always been asked, how do we change the world? And I've got a stock answer to that, and it's you've got no right to change the world. The world has no right to be changed. Go to Gandhi, become the change you wish to see most in the world. Mm-hmm. We have the right to grow ourselves into the best version of ourselves we can be, so that we can be the example and the invitation. But some people were born to star in a horror movie. Some people were born to be able to give us the example of what not to be and what not to do. So, they're on their own journey. Now we can send them love and we can try to help. We can do what we feel is right, but we have no right to take away their movie script. And if that's what they need to learn this time around, again, how controversial would you want to get? You can argue that Hitler was a good thing, because without what he did, we wouldn't have had the United Nations. We wouldn't have stood up as a global community and says, enough, that will never happen again.
Yeah.
So in that respect, there was stuff that came out of it which has probably saved millions of lives or raised the standard of what's acceptable and what isn't. Mm-hmm. But from a low level of consciousness, oh my God, he said Hitler was a good thing. Give me a break.
Right.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But some people, by contrast, show us what has to happen. Do we have the right to go and change people? No.
No. So it starts here, and it ends here.
And it ends here with the person in the mirror. You're the star of your own movie. Most people, unfortunately, are walking around as film extras in everybody else's movie because they don't own that power. They don't own that responsibility. Or they're complaining that the director and the producer of their movie hasn't given them a golden script.
Right.
Right? No, that's not how it works. You're here in a growth-centric environment called Earth School. You're in the gym. Go enjoy it. You were born an athlete. You've got all the muscles you need to be able to lift this. And, oh no, my golden lottery ticket didn't cash. That's not fair. I get resentful of everybody else who I think's having a better movie than me. That's just victim mentality. Mm-hmm. That's the to-me mentality. That's never going to get you out of anywhere. That's bitching the fact that you've got to go and train. Well, no. Stop bitching about the fact you've got to train and start focusing on the fact you were born to get a medal. That's a different mentality. But the conformity aspect is so powerful because we are conditioned as part of the species to conform. It's the 95% law. That's why 5% of people in the world own the world. Yeah. Because 95% of people are going 100 miles an hour to nowhere, with mediocrity at their back. Why? Because they don't realize that you become who you hang with. And they'd rather settle for people that validate their sense of self-worth. Now, that's no disrespect. They just haven't been given an education in a different way.
Hence the need to elevate your peer group.
1,000%. And whether that's proximity, whether that's online, whether that's through the books you read, whether it's how you program yourself, it's a choice. But if you get up in the morning and you watch constant negative news, CNN, then you are basically giving up the right to program yourself over to somebody who has a different agenda that doesn't have your best interests at heart, because choices have consequences.
Yeah. No, I stopped watching the news 2 years ago. It was the best thing I ever did. Oh. Best thing I ever did.
Don't
I know you did that for how many years? 12,
17 years
That's
since
great.
I've seen the news report or watched in any kind of media or
Wonderful.
newspaper. Oh, thank goodness. I've got no clue what's going on in the world. I've got every clue what's going on in my world.
Exactly.
And my world works a lot better than most people who watch the news. That's not to say I don't have the same, or tougher workouts. Mm-hmm. But I have a different context for understanding them.
And let's go a little bit deeper. You call it you're the star in your own movie. I call it the hero in your own story. Well, let's go a little bit deeper on that, because I think it's really important that this hits home with our listeners and viewers. Talk a little bit more about exactly what you mean. You are writing your own script, correct?
Well, you are co-creating your script. I do believe that, from my perspective, let's call it, life the movie. Where were we before we came here? You can hypothesize that, but it was certainly non-physical. Everything by its very definition of being physical means that its destination is non-physical. So the essence of life has to be non-physical, which is why the superset consciousness has to be primary, because everything in the physical world is destined to be non-physical. We can't circumvent that. So if we decide to pick up a script, and I like using the movie metaphor because people can relate to it. There is a difference between the character that you are currently playing in this movie, called Roger, and the actor that is playing that role, which is your consciousness. With me so far?
Yes.
So if you can make a distinction between those two, before you came here, you were the actor and you picked up a script, and it was to be born in this particular computer game called Earth in the year 19 whatever it was.
69.
There you go. 60s kid. And for me, where did we come from before? You can hypothesize. Don't get caught up about it. It's above our pay grade. You get wrapped around the axle and start killing people over whose version of the label is right. Don't go there. But I came here with a script. I believe that I chose my parents. I think that's an empowering belief to have, because there's an international epidemic called let's blame our parents for everything. So that gets rid of that. If I chose my parents, as dysfunctional as they were or weren't, what does that mean? Maybe I was here to learn something from them. Just because I didn't like the gym that I was put into with the early workouts doesn't mean to say that I didn't choose to become an athlete before I came here. So I pick up the script. Now, I've got a particular natural predisposition to whatever my truth is in how that script goes, which is why we have a calling. It's why sometimes we feel drawn to things. It's why we have a passion to evolve into certain things, and why we feel a resistance to other things that aren't in line with that.
Okay.
We each have an individual script that is a really good guideline of where we want to go. How we get there is down to something called free will. But if your destination is to be, go to New York, and I'm currently in LA, I've got many different ways and vehicles and modes. I can scenic route, direct route, it doesn't matter. But I'll always be drawn to that, to head east. So as the star of the movie of my life, my job is to show up as the best I can be, listen to what it is that my intuition, my gut feel, my sense of direction, and try to do the right thing. Place one foot in front of the other as best we can. Choose love instead of fear in ever more challenging circumstances is the gateway to a happier life of growth and service. But if we get to a point where we are going off track, we will get escalating feedback from the director and the producer, or whatever label you want to call it, that'll designed to bring us on track. And if we don't listen to that, there's a reason we call it escalating feedback. It's like the rumble strip on the freeway. You're driving down, and there's a rumble strip either side that's designed to wake you up if you drift off track, thankfully. Now, use a health metaphor. So I'm going along the freeway of life, and I'm listening to my music, and I'm chomping my Doritos, Churritos, and Big Mac and drive-thrus. And all of a sudden, I hit the rumble strip. I start getting out of breath when I'm walking upstairs for the first time, and I'm not happy with it. What do most people do? Well, that rumble strip's interfering with my music, so I turn up the music. Not listening. It. So, and then guess what happens? Now it's like, if you're lucky, you may get a mild heart attack, or you may get a stroke, or it may be that, you didn't listen to the rumble strip and you go off the edge and you don't come back. So life is always giving us feedback. Those rumble strip, we get a pretty fair, decent leeway. But you will always feel, whether you're in a job you hate, whether you're with people that you don't resonate with, whether you're on a path that just doesn't feel right, it's the rumble strip. What's showing up? Doubt, confusion, unfulfillment. It's the rumble strip. Turn down the music, pay attention, take different action. Put the Big Mac away, stop supersizing your meal, order the salad, get in the gym. Or, the rumble strip's going to get louder until you fall off the edge. So, for me, you have a calling. Your script has a general overarching theme. But you have free will. You get to choose. Love or fear is the binary equation. What decisions you make. And those decisions have consequences. And therefore, you can unfold the movie of your life as a victim, complaining at the director and the producer, or you can take charge and say, no, I want to make this the best movie I can. Now, that doesn't mean that you have a mansion, $1 million, and a Ferrari and a soulmate. That's fairy tale Disneyland thinking. Now, that's not the gym. That's saying, no, I want to arrive on the pedestal with the Olympic gold already.
Right.
Just don't make me do all the work.
Right.
No. So understanding that, you want this movie to be an incredible movie. You want to have the last words out of your mouth, if you're lucky enough to pick them, to be, wow, I would pay to see that again. And what does a good movie have? Everything. It has drama and comedy and tragedy and romance and action and surprise and all of that stuff.
Yes.
So that's the movie I want to live. I don't want some safe, boring movie that nobody wants to pay to see.
Right.
That's coming from a fear-based Darwinian mentality. Why do I say Darwinian? Because Einstein made a very powerful statement. He said the most powerful question a person could answer in their lifetime is, do they live in a friendly or hostile universe? Again, binary equation. If you come from a Darwinian, Newtonian paradigm of there's an out there, and I'm separate from it, then you're going to come from a fear-based default mentality because everything with teeth's out to get me.
Right.
I've got to look after myself. It's egocentric. If you believe in a friendly universe, and I do, I'm an inverse paranoid. I think the entire universe is involved in a giant hidden conspiracy to make me happy and successful. And so I know the universe has got my back, so things happen for a reason that serve my interests, not detract from them. And if I suddenly find myself thrown up on a treadmill, in whatever circumstance of life that equates to, then wow, what an incredible strength I'm going to build from this to make sure that next time I'm going to hit a personal best. So I live in a friendly universe. Now you can't have that mentality if you don't believe in something greater than atoms, electrons, cells, and biology, which we know. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. Let's just say it as it is. In law, we enshrine metaphysics. How do I know that? Go to the drug companies. The FDA won't even approve a drug unless it can outperform your own belief system. We call that the placebo effect. And if you take some of the greatest antidepressants on the market and go do your research, they outperform the placebo in double-blind controlled studies by 2%. In other words, your thoughts around the sugar pill that you took thinking it was an antidepressant created more biochemistry shifts in your body than the actual physical stuff that was coming in trying to knock it into shape. In other words, your beliefs, metaphysical, non-physical, affected the physical. Oh no, we can't have that in science. Well, excuse me, it's in law. Right, wake up. Spontaneous remission, anomaly, ignore it. Doesn't fit within the paradigm. Oh, really? Statistical coincidence that we'd call synchronicity? Oh, anomaly, ignore it. Oh, really? Because pair labs at Stanford say that it's 1 billion to 1 that doesn't happen, which is far higher levels of validation than most other science that follows Koch's postulates. Give me a break.
Exactly.
So we're going to wake up over time and create this again. Science progresses one funeral at a time. But to have that sense of, wow, I'm the star of my own movie. Therefore, I get to choose whether I go and win the Academy Award, whether I get to make it safely to the end where nothing really bad happened to me. Oh, wow, give me a break. Look at the movie industry. Look at the greats who challenged themselves. What does a good actor do consistently? They pick roles that are harder and harder to evolve their own talents.
Yes.
Why did you get born into a set of parents who were dysfunctional? Well, maybe it was the script you chose to become a better actor, so you could build the muscle of compassion, so you could build the muscle of forgiveness, so you could build the muscle of understanding, so you could offer to other people who had dysfunctional parents an example they could relate to of how to turn that around rather than bitch and complain about it and use it to justify why you became an alcoholic. So if you have the awareness of saying, well, look at Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, stunning role, went and lived with autistic people to try to understand them. That's not taking an average actor out of acting school and say, I'll just take a role because I can act in this commercial because it's easy. No.
No way.
You take Bob Hoskins in the groundbreaking Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where he was acting with an imaginary character
Right.
for the first time on screen that was then put in. I mean, groundbreaking roles that won these guys national acclaim, admiration from their peer group, awards. Why did they do it? They wanted to become better. Why did you pick the script that you have right now? Is it to try to be a boring, safe commercial that you think you can act the lines in? Or is it to test yourself in the actor of the movie of your life to go win the Academy Award? That's the invitation why we're here. And if not, the director's going to give you some pretty strong feedback.
I love this conversation. again, I always think about the listener because I want to put myself in their shoes. So for those who are thinking, gosh, Peter, that sounds great. Yes, I want to be the star of my own movie, but I'm stuck in this rut, or I have these responsibilities. I can't do this. I can't do that.
Context is definitive, because all I'm hearing there is, I want to be an athlete, but you've just given me some weights to lift. Well, yeah, we've all got to say there is no Pollyanna.
So we have to get rid of the resistance.
We have to understand why we're in the gym. Now, then we can start asking better questions.
Okay.
So, questions are the steering wheel of the mind. Most people ask lousy questions. And your brain is like a Labrador. You throw a stick, it'll go fetch it.
Right.
Now, it doesn't care if that's poison ivy, a hand grenade, or a squeaky toy. Its job is to go fetch the stick. Right. So, you ask questions, the brain will go find an answer. Most people are asking poor questions because they're being programmed by the media to ask poor questions. Oh, why is this happening? And the brain will go fetch the stick because you're a schmuck. Because your boss was right about you not good for anything. Because your business studies teacher was right that you should never get into business. Because your older brother was right that you'll never beat him at that. Whatever.
Right.
Ask better questions. How can I turn this into my advantage? How can I grow from this? What's funny about this I've not noticed yet? What's a situation that would make this seem easier by contrast? So, I lost my wallet on the plane. Is that the worst that's happened to me? 150 years ago?
Right.
You'd be grateful for being able to sit on something that could take you to the other side of the world in hours, not have to sail the Titanic and hope it didn't hit an iceberg. Contrast frames are huge. On my recent adventure, which I'm sure we'll get to, I was giving people copies of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I challenge anybody to read that book and not cry with gratitude at the fact that the problems they think they have are nothing compared to being in Auschwitz. Wake up.
There's always something worse.
Contrast frames are a beautiful way to recontextualize your current adversity. One of the reasons I ran the Marathon des Sables several years ago, which, for those watching, don't do it. And for those that are not familiar with that, it's the toughest foot race in the world. I mean, we're running a full marathon, 26.2 miles every day, back to back for 7 days across the Sahara in 135 degrees, sub-zero at night, carrying 40 pounds on your back.
Why?
Exactly. And day 4 is a double marathon, 52 miles.
Oh my gosh.
But for that, it was an incredible contrast frame. I ran on the beach yesterday, having at the end of that race swore I would never run on sand again, never want to go to a holiday where there was a beach. But no, running on sand, and I did a couple of miles yesterday, and I'm pushing through, and I was so grateful the fact that I'm running a couple of miles on a beach here. I'm not running 200 miles across the Sahara.
Right.
And if I can do that, I can handle anything. If I can cope with that, childbirth, ladies, for goodness sake. Do you know how many guys would run a mile?
They would never do that.
We were faced with that.
Right.
Yeah, we'll go take on 3 guys in a bar. Yeah, we'll go lift a heavy barbell, but childbirth, no way. Yeah, and women are so powerful, so beautiful, so the feminine is so divine and this level of strength, and most women don't credit themselves for that, unfortunately. So to be able to go through that, and right now, all you got to do is deal with 4 o'clock in the morning nappies. Give me a break. Right? Do you want to go through labor again? Yeah. So contrast frames are great. Yeah. Okay, so you got to deal with the fact that you've got to tell off your kid or ground them. You've got to deal with the fact that you've got to drive an extra 40 minutes to work because your boss has relocated you. Whatever. Right? Contrast frame.
Yeah.
There's always a way to look at it that makes it more empowering and less disempowering.
Good. You just mentioned your recent assignment. Why don't we go there?
I'm happy.
And talk about that.
Not so recent now. It's been about a year and a half since I came out.
Sure. Okay. I'm reading the book, and it's called The Inside Track, and it's about your 6-month thereabouts prison sentence. Mm-hmm. And for those who are interested, they could get all the details. We don't have to go through all that of why you're there. I'm more interested in this story, this book that you wrote, and I have to tell you, it's very emotional, for starters, because I was picturing myself as you in that prison writing these letters. And, I found myself tearing up many times because of how real it is. But I'd love if you could just talk about the day you went in, the attitude you took, and the change that you made in this short period of time. I have this gratitude and this thankfulness to you and to all the people that you touched in there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's looking back, it's a little surreal, to be fair. But no, and just to give a brief amount of context, I was the only non-criminal here in what was Britain's pretty much most violent jail. And I've never been accused of a crime, never been arrested. I was a civil prisoner and learned a lot about my ego in court because I was there for contempt. And it was on a charge I never for a second thought the judge would entertain. I thought it would be laughed out of court. I wasn't prepared. I learned a lot about my own actions on that. And I essentially got over firepowered, shall we say, legally by a large multi-billion-dollar company. And we can talk all about, say, the reasons why I went in. It's almost irrelevant because I said to people, if I hadn't gone in that way, I'd have gone in another way because I had to go. This was such an incredible event, one of the most inspiring and uplifting and empowering adventures I've ever had the privilege of living. And when it looked, you talk about my attitude going in, when it looked as if it was going the wrong way, and my girl Thea at the time said, why is this happening? And I'm like, well, honey, I've got to be honest, I'm very blessed. Millions of people around the world have benefited from my work over the last, how many years of me doing what I do. But the real people that could probably benefit the most maybe never get to see my work because they're in somewhere like jail or prison. If the universe wants to send me in so I can go do my work, let me go do my work. And I never for a second went in with the identity of a prisoner. We talked earlier about identity and how powerful that is. Why do vegetarians not eat meat? It's not because they don't have different teeth. Right. It's because I am a vegetarian. The reasons you can choose the identity are varied, but once you have an identity, you will act consistent with that. So, I chose the identity not of a prisoner because that would have been disempowering. I chose the identity of a secret agent of change because I knew why I was going in. And I was quite excited at that mission because I also recognized that life has what I call graduation events. If you're in the gym, there's a time to go to the Olympics. There's a time to go to the World Championship. There's a time to go to the trials, and the heats. So I talk about having a positive game, developing a positive mental attitude. The specifics around how to do that in challenging circumstances. How do you choose love instead of fear in challenging circumstances? Is it any wonder that I'm going to get an exam? Of course not. If I can't pass that exam, or if I can't do well or show up walking my talk in a real scenario, I've got no right to stand on stage and preach. You should never listen to another word I say. That's disingenuous, it's inauthentic, and there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't want a graduation event to test them. So I totally saw that for what it was, and I went in. But
you didn't have much time, right? I mean, how long between?
Realization can take a heartbeat.
Okay.
As soon as I saw what was happening.
Is it the same day?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Once it looked like it was going to go the wrong
no
way,
time.
I'm like, if I do go away, there's clearly a reason for it. Why? Because I live in a friendly universe. It's got my back. Default mentality. It's not hard for me to search for reasons, and I'll give the listeners. I explained this on another recent podcast, and it's so critical. I'll teach you how most people's body wages chemical warfare against them. But to finish your point, I went in as a secret agent of change. My job was to go help people because that's what I do. I be the example and the invitation. I've got no right to change anybody. We've established that. But I can be the invitation. There were so many people there that were begging for an invitation because there's just none in there. And so I walked in, and it's funny, the first prison officer that was giving me my clothes, he said, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah, sure. He says, are you a policeman? I'm like, no, that's definitely not. Please don't spread that rumor.
Right.
Not the kind of label you want to be going into jail with, And then I go into this holding room, where there's like maybe a dozen, 2 dozen other prisoners that have come in that day, either being transferred or come in before they get assigned their cells, and then I have to go for a medical. So after an hour or two, I get called in for the medical. I'm sitting there and I'm chatting with the doctor, and halfway through, he takes his glasses off and he leans over, he looks at me, he says, "Excuse me," he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Sure." He says, "Are you undercover?" And I start laughing, I'm smiling, I'm like, I said, "Why do you ask that?" He says, "I've never seen somebody so happy on their first ever day in prison." Right? And I started laughing, and I'm like, "Well, you know something, I'd let you into a secret. I really think I am undercover, and here's why." And I thought he was going to give me some antipsychotic medication at that point. But no, and yeah, I went in, and it's trial by fire. There's no real induction that will prepare you for what that life is like. It is harsh. If you don't adapt quickly, you're not shown what to do. You've got to learn quick. You've got to be streetwise and switched on, and there's a lot of people that aren't. And I'd never experienced anything like that, but I'm pretty streetwise when it comes to understanding human behavior. So I could navigate quite quickly the rules. Plus, I was filtering it through, I'm here to help, I'm here to serve, I'm here to make a difference, I'm here to change. So I started doing what I do. And I remember I walked into the first cell that they gave me. I buddied up with this Bangladeshi guy, and I walked in, and I almost stopped in my tracks and like got this big smile on my face. Oh wow! This tiny little cell, about the size of the sort of set here, and I'm like, he said, "Well, what's wrong?" I've gone, "They gave us our own meditation room with a toilet. Epic, right?" And the guy thought I'd lost it, but I was being real. I mean, I was on this adventure. And as I wrote to my clients, and this is what the book is. The book isn't written after the fact. Anybody can write after the fact.
Right.
And this book was never meant for the public. These are the actual 11 letters that I wrote to my coaching clients every 2 weeks as I was going through the event, as it was unfolding in real time. And I'm like, listen, on the first letter, I put in there, listen, don't worry about me. I'm here on location filming the prison scene in my movie for the next few months. All right, that's fine. But I'm going to bring you along for the ride, because what an incredible case study we've got an opportunity to look at here on what I've been teaching you guys on how to apply it in a real situation. See, theory doesn't cover the price of admission to the high levels of awareness or greatness. And you want to remember that one.
Yes.
So, talking a good game is cheap, but how do you show up when and I'd lost my business. I went from 53 staff to 3 staff in 3 weeks. I was saddled with hundreds of thousands in legal debt, which I didn't think the judge would award because I was on legal aid, but he did. I got really hammered over the coals, and was faced with losing everything that I had, from my business to my fans to my reputation to everything, because nobody understood the context, because I'd not given them any, because I thought I'd be laughed out of court in 5 minutes. And now I'm faced with the door shutting behind me, and 6 months in a place where 3 deaths in 1 week, not murders, but 3 deaths in 1 week was the worst week I was there. Attempted murders weekly, blood on the floor daily. I mean, this is a cross between Shawshank Redemption, it was a 200-year-old Victorian prison, and Prison Break at the level of violence. That's the place I was in, Pentonville. And I was there, and I wrote to my guy, I said, listen, every 2 weeks I'm going to write and show you what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, because if I can apply this in this scenario, you can apply it in a broken relationship. You can apply it when you lose your job. So come along for the ride and let's see what happens. And I had no idea at that point what would happen, I just knew why I was there. And as you read the book, I mean, when I came out, they said, wow, we've learned more in these 11 letters on what you've done and how I changed the system and the lives I changed and the suicides that I stopped and and if you read chapter 7 where I was doing with Gary, I got 10 minutes to stop somebody killing themselves permanently. How do you do that? Right? You need to understand and navigate. It's not difficult, you just need a map. The amount of people I got off drugs, the difference that I made in terms of the attitude, fundamentally changed the intake system that's now being rolled out across several prisons in the UK and Australia and affecting thousands of people. It was a real blessing. But I came out and they said, we've learned more in the 11 letters in the 6 months than following you around the world for the last 2 years on stage. You've got to publish this. Yeah. I'm like, well, it wasn't meant for the public. This is advanced stuff. And it's real, and it's me being completely authentic, as you see. And they said, no, you have to. You can help a lot of people. And that was the trigger. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And it's literally, there's no admonishment. That is the 11 letters or embellishment. That's the 11 letters that I wrote, raw and real. And I'm very blessed that we launched it last year. It went bestseller in 2 hours. I think it went Amazon #1 in 4 hours. Yes. Sold to 20 plus countries in the first day. And I'm very touched and blessed. If you read the reviews, it's pretty much changed the lives of everybody that's read it.
Yeah. And I'm a testimony to that, because it is having, and I cannot wait to finish this actually, It's having a major impact on me. There's some great stories in there. If you could just give the story about Ali. I love that story for our listeners.
Well, he was the first guy that I was banged up with, and he was from Bangladesh. He looked like his world had fallen. He was so depressed. He was like he couldn't speak. He was in shock, and a lot of people are. He'd never been to prison before. He'd also not been found guilty. He'd gone into prison that day. He'd parked outside the court, ran into court to get a date for his trial that he was confident he was going to win. It was over a scuffle that was in a bar, and never been in trouble before. It was on a Friday. And the judge, instead of giving him a trial date and letting him go, they set a trial date, but they remanded him and put him on remand. And he was sent down, and we ended up in a cell together. Now that on its own would be pretty heartbreaking. But what was more heartbreaking, he'd just spent his life savings on getting married the next day.
Yeah.
His wedding, the people, the prep, and it's a big deal in the Bangladeshi community, and boom, now he's in jail. And what does he say? How embarrassing. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, but everyone cancel your flights, your travel plans, all the money I've just spent because the groom's now in jail? You kidding? Now, don't get me wrong, I was engaged when I went in. I was due to be married. My wedding was set for June. It was already paid for in Portofino in Italy. And yeah, like him, the groom was absent. I had a lot of weight on the bar. Yeah, but that's part of the workout. But I remember he was so apologetic because he smoked. I'm a non-smoker. So he was trying to have cigarettes standing near the window, the little tiny holes in the window, blowing smoke out, trying to apologize, and you deal with what you deal with. But we were together for 48 hours. We weren't allowed out the cell. There was no showers, there was no exercise, there was nothing, because it was weekend on A wing, which was the induction wing. So we were together for 48 hours. Now, people pay me a lot of money to coach them for 48 hours. Right. He was going to get some, you can't not be with me for 48 hours and not have some profound shifts. I mean, that's just the nature of unfortunately, I mean, he was like forced induction, right? And I was going to do what I do, and he was my first victim, yay! And what was interesting is at the end of that, when we got let out on Monday to go for our kind of official, PowerPoint induction, which is a waste of time, and I then got moved to a non-smoking wing. When I left, his parting comments made my magic moments list, and I kept a magic moments list while I was inside. Again, you need to search for reasons to be grateful, to be happy. And his parting comments made my magic moments list, and he turned around and he says, listen, I came to prison on Friday. I thought my world had fallen in. I mean, the guy was ready to throw it all away. He said, I now know I came to prison just to meet you. Wow. And that touched my heart. I was like, wow. And I spoke to him when I got released 6 months later. We swapped numbers. I called him. He was married. He'd gone and got married again.
He did.
Yeah, and all the family forgave him. And he went to trial, and I think was not guilty. So it never really happened. It was just one of those things. So yeah.
But again, it was purposeful for him, in his words, to meet you.
The river of life winds.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so many stories came out of that, and there's only so many I could put in the book. I mean, there's so many that I could tell that just aren't even in there. That was just would touch your heart. In fact, one of my favorites I'll share was the night before I was released. I was actually finally, for the last 6 weeks, I got to an open prison, finally, where I was a little more unleashed. I think I became the unofficial prison social worker within 10 days. And I'd have a whole load of people I was helping and coaching and working through and working on their mindset and getting them to a place. And one of the biggest changes that I made with people was teaching them the difference between liberty and freedom. See, freedom is a state of mind. Liberty is what they restricted. Two are very different.
Yeah.
All they did with me was take away my liberty for a while. They reduced my liberty. So I didn't have a bigger decision space. I couldn't choose to go to the shops. I couldn't choose to go home and walk my dogs. I just had a smaller decision space, that was all, due to restricted liberty. But freedom is a state of mind. Nobody could ever take my freedom. I was more free in my tiny little cell than most of the prison guards coming to work who hated their job.
Yes.
And they couldn't understand that until you start to educate people. So, but I remember walking around the prison on the night before I was released, and a gentleman came up to me, and I wrote a story called Mud or Stars. I don't know if you've managed to read that yet, it's in the back of the book.
No.
Changed a lot of lives. And the reason that I wrote that was because if you try to coach somebody unsolicited, you'll probably get some pretty instant feedback that it's unwelcome, there's resistance. And a lot of coaches and a lot of people, through the best willingness in the world, want to help people. They try to impose their coaching, their advice, their opinions on others, and then wonder why they get kickback. Mm-hmm. And so with the prisoners that wanted help, I could work quite quickly. For those that I could see were in a lot of pain, but I needed to engineer an invitation. Otherwise, they're going to say, well, you don't know me, you don't know my story, how do you tell me? Because the psychological patterns that are running are as follows. Remember I mentioned we all have the fear that we're not enough.
Yes.
So if I suddenly try to tell you, and we do this in families, relationships, best friends, oh, let me tell you what you should do, is, well, hang on a minute. The presupposition is where I'm at right now isn't good enough. Therefore, my defenses come up to block that, and I don't even take on the coaching, because even to accept it would mean that you're right, I'm not good enough, and that awareness is so painful, I throw up a force field.
So it's the wrong approach.
I'm not even listening to what you're saying, I'm too busy defending why I'm already good enough. So, in order to get past that, I had to be a little strategic. Because if you sit next to two people that are talking, and they're giving each other some really good advice, you think, oh wow, that's pretty cool. Your defenses are down because it's not about you. So you're free to choose taking that on. So I wrote a story called Mud or Stars. And it was after the old saying, two men sat behind prison bars, one saw mud, the other saw stars.
Okay.
And it's all about that your conditions never define you, they simply give you the opportunity to define yourself. And it really was a fictional story that I wrote that followed some guy that had just been found guilty and gone to prison for the first time, and he's scared, he's deer in the headlights, he's angry, he's in shock, he's in denial, he's like all of these emotions that people go through, and he's in that processing room that I was in at the beginning. And he's looking around where to sit, and he sits next to what turns out to be this wise old con. And the two have this conversation. And there's kickback and resistance, and the old con kind of navigates this guy through to a completely different level of awareness that empowers him and changes his entire experience of prison. It's only 4 pages, because I had to keep it short, but there's another letter in the back of the book from one of the prison officers who'd been in the prison for 22, 23 years, somewhere around there, and he writes in there that I impacted with that story 60 to 70% of the entire prison.
Incredible.
He said instead of hearing the usual grunt in the mornings, he quotes, you could hear them shouting to each other mud or stars to try to cheer themselves up. And it got a ton of people off antidepressants. It shifted the mentality of the wings. It reduced the violence. It won me a national award for
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so it had a profound impact. But when I got to the open prison, I wanted that story to get into the hands of all the new prisoners arriving, because it would make such a difference.
Sure.
I've seen the difference it would make. But the person who was in charge of the new prison induction, because the prison was ran by prisoners, was a prisoner who was a cokehead. Now, drugs inside there were so rife, way more prevalent than on the outside. Anything you want to order, heroin, crack, smack, spice.
I read that.
Just,
How does it get in?
everywhere, from prison officers supplementing their income, and the BBC thinks that's at least 2%, 1 in 50 officers will smuggle in whatever you want. Drones thrown over through visits, you get creative.
Okay.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
So, thanks, Tony. So, drugs were rampant. So the guy that was in charge of meeting and greeting all of the new prisoners was high on coke most days. So he didn't want to know, you couldn't talk to him. So what I would do every day is I would go down and photocopy. In the open prison, it was a lot more. I couldn't do this for the 4.5 months I was in Pentonville. That was just too restrictive. It was like proper bang up. I would go photocopy new mud or stars, and I'd go to the new induction block, and I would hand it out like a mailman, just random mailman, handing all the new prisoners or putting them on their bed the mud or stars. So the last night I'm walking around the perimeter, doing my sort of farewells and goodbyes, and I get approached by a gentleman called Graham in his 60s. He comes up and says, excuse me, he says, you're the guy that wrote Mud or Stars, right? I'm like, well, yes. He says, would you come to my cell and sign my copy? I've gone, well, I wrote it anonymously. My name's not on it. I didn't look in for credit. I said, but people knew it was kind of me, word it got about. I said, I'm not looking for credit. He says, it would mean a lot. I said, oh, sure, no problem. I'll come, I'll sign. If it means that to him, I'm happy to do so. While I'm walking to his cell, he tells me his story. And his story was very touching. He had twin boys when he was younger, in his 30s, and he'd got divorced from his wife soon after they were born. They were estranged. She'd kept him away from the kids. He'd never been there for them as a father when they were growing up, and he felt very guilty about that. And one had grown up to be quite a significant drug dealer. He got caught, and his father thought, wow, this is an opportunity for me to repay back all of the times I wasn't there. I'll take the rap.
Okay.
They gave the father 6 years, never committed the crime. And he turned around and he said he got 3 years to do left on his sentence. And he says, taught me a huge lesson, because the kid never said thank you, never even supported his new wife financially while he was inside. He said he learned a lot about it. It was really him trying to buy off his guilt than it was really about adding value. It was about him reconciling his level of being an absent father than really adding to value to the son's life. Son took it for granted, couldn't care, and just probably gone off and committed more crime. He said, but look, I read Mud or Stars. He says, it had a profound impact. I think it could help a lot of prisoners. I'm like, well, me too. He says, I've just taken over the job of the new prison induction orderly. I photocopied 10 copies this morning and gave them out. Would you mind if I can? And what I've been trying to make happen from day one, the night before I'm released, and that was magic moment, Roger, number 199, and walking out the next morning was magic moment 200. Them all written
no
down.
coincidence. No coincidence.
What's funny, I've kept magic moments list for a long time. I teach the power of magic moments in my seminars, my business school, and I have 1,000, 1,100 magic moments for my life, and these are memories that really touch you. That we put them on the shelf, they get dusty. We very rarely pull them down and polish them up, and then when we're feeling in a negative time or something, there's extra weight on the bar we're struggling to lift in the gym of life, it's great to go back to your magic moments list and just relive some of the incredible things that have happened in our life and realize we're not victims. Sure. We just be very usually partially selective as the memories we think of, and when you're in an angry mood you think of angry memories. When you're positive, so read the positive memories as a tool. And what's funny is I've got like 1,100 something magic moments in my life, right? Aside from 200 in 6 months in prison, right? I'm like, I should go back.
Yeah.
I've had more stress since I've been out of jail than going in. I had a better time inside. I should probably think about paying another visit. Well, no, I won't put that out there, but you get the point.
Sure. And where do you keep them? In a notebook?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, obviously I wrote them in when I was inside. There's no computers, but
okay.
In fact, the inside track, the first 8 letters were all handwritten.
Okay.
It was only until I got to the new jail that I was able to finally get to a keyboard.
I see.
Right, and the 5th letter is quite short because I just had so much pain here. This knuckle was just locked because there was so much I wanted to share to add value to the people on the outside. And I was so grateful because I was getting dozens of letters a day consistently. I've got them all, and I put them over my cell wall till I ran out of space. The guards and officers wondered who the hell I was and what was going on. But they meant so much. They were such an oasis in a desert parched of love. I mean, it was soul nourishing to read letters of support from people who I'd never met, from countries I'd never been to, and what my work had meant to them over the years. And it was quite polarizing because some of the people had turned around and says, "Oh God, he's gone to jail, he must be bad." Not until they saw what happened and the full story about when I came out, because all of the initial allegations that the multinational made when I came out got dropped, as I knew they would. They would never get to court.
Right.
They just managed to successfully spin the contempt application, which, using conjecture and distortion of context, which I write a lot about in the book, about understanding the legal system, because especially in America, you guys live in such a litigious society.
Yes.
You sneeze at somebody, you get sued.
Right.
So you need to know how to navigate that, because it's not, and certainly in a civil action, it's not about who's right or wrong. That's a fantasy that the public still largely buy into. It's about who can put a convincing argument together to win their point by distorting context to support their version of content.
It's scary.
When Apple sued Samsung at the Berlin Fair in Germany, it wasn't about patent infringements, which is what their argument was about. It was about to get an injunction to stop Samsung from putting their products on display so Apple could get a head start on the market. It's a chess game.
Yeah.
You talk to Dan Penny, he'll tell you litigation is a tool. That's it. If you think it's right and wrong, you're in Disneyland. So, they were just better chess players than me because that's the game they play. And they had a very ruthless, $100 million law firm that I would hire tomorrow if I could because they're really good.
Sure. Well, I recommend everyone buy the Inside Track. Of course, you could get it on Amazon. We're actually going to give a free download on Audible.
Oh, brilliant.
For people who are interested in listening to it. And I understand you actually are the narrator, is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure people heard my voice the way that I was trying to give it. And so I do the entire audio there. I work with an incredible sound engineer. We've got some really good musical score in there as well, and some sound effects to really enhance the experience of people listening, because a lot of people prefer to listen than read these days. We could get into why that is if you wish, but it's I wanted to make sure that it was on Audible or Kindle or iPad or all the usual stuff.
Be sure to tune in 2 weeks from today for the continuation of our amazing conversation with Mr. Peter Sage. Thanks for tuning into American Real. Be sure to visit our website, AmericanReal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. At American Real, we're on a mission to help as many people around the world fulfill their dreams and obtain their goals. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. And speaking of podcasting, our next course will be starting soon. So if you're interested in launching your own podcast, join me and Podcast Your Passion. I'll take you through my 8-week course where I'll mentor you to build a world-class podcast. I'm only taking on a small group of people who want to share their passion through broadcasting, where I'll have you up on iTunes and YouTube within weeks so you can podcast your passion. Click on the link below for more information. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.